What's going on, everybody? I think the new kid showing up on the block is ESPN Plus, and we just recently heard about that with UFC. And before the UFC started talking about it, I hadn't heard anything about ESPN Plus and the things that it had to offer into the last Dillashaw fight, where him and Cejudo fought for the championship belt. And Dillashaw got beat, for you Dillashaw fans that are listening. But more on that some other time. But more addressing the new kid on the block called ESPN Plus. You know, back in the day when first started watching UFC, there were pay-per-view fights. You tuned into the pay-per-view, you paid your money, you watched the fights, and, you know, you were entertained. So as time moved on, we got used to seeing fights televised on some of the local networks, such as, you know, Spike TV and Versus TV and Fuel TV and things like that. And we got into the habit of calling those, you know, free fights. And they were labeled as or branded as prelim fights. So they weren't actually free because you were paying for your cable subscription. So they weren't exactly free fights. You had to have, you know, your cable subscriptions to see those, the Fuel, the Spike, the Versus, unless for some reason they were just televised on NBC, CBS, you know, stations like that, where you just set up your antenna. But as time moved on, UFC started moving some of the specific prelim fights to Facebook, and I think some people remember those. You know, it was kind of cool if you didn't have cable, you just had your phone or Wi-Fi or just data. You could just bring up the fight on your phone on your Facebook and start watching it. And you know, it was cool to be able to watch a UFC fight on your phone. And you know, those got branded as free fights. But you know, it's time to move on. UFC evolved, and you know, one of the things I'm hearing now is all the advancement of UFC, and everybody says, you know, well, this is good for the sport. This is good for the sport. I think one thing we have to understand is the UFC is a league. It's not the sport. So when we're talking about UFC doing these things, you're talking about a league doing these things. Is it good for the sport that UFC televises? Yes. But as far as the whole sport, and if you encompass the grappling, Polaris, EBIs in there, is that part of the sport you're talking about, or is that under the UFC brand? And I think we know that's under the UFC brand, because you're not seeing your local MMA fights being advanced a whole lot by this, unless you're talking about just by the fact of people are talking about MMA. You know, MMA is the subject that people are talking about, so therefore the sport moves on. But I don't think we should get that mixed up when people mention UFC and then they talk about the sport and what it's good for. I think a lot of it's good for UFC, the fighters, and their brand. And sometimes that's confused with calling it the sport. So just want to distinguish between those two. But like I said, talking about Fuel TV, Spike, Versus, and those things like that. Later we see the evolution of Fox Sports coming into the picture. Also see the evolution of Fight Pass coming into the picture after Fox Sports. So UFC enters to the deal with Fox Sports to be televised so many shows a year, and they're labeled as free fights. But one of the situations we got into with Fox Sports is when you looked up the fight and you inquired where to watch the fight, sometimes it was shown on Fox 16, a few of the events. Sometimes it was shown on Fox Sports 1. Sometimes it was shown on Fox Sports 2. Sometimes they didn't have any information at all where the fights were going to be televised before the pay-per-view or just the fight nights. So when you turned on TV and you turned on Fox Sports 1 and you saw football, NFL on there, and you kept watching NFL and they would go over, or maybe you were watching NASCAR and the NASCAR race just kept going on and there was no UFC to be shown. And if you check Twitter, you know, you would find out, oh, well, they're showing it over Fox Sports too. So you could switch over there. But the way they constructed their cable network, and you had to buy two separate tiers to get Fox Sports 1 and Fox Sports 2. So it's kind of frustrating, the randomness that they put into this. And if you only had a lower tier, you didn't have Fox Sports 2, which at the time when those channels came out, they were supposed to be on the same level, and you weren't supposed to be paying. If you got one tier of cable, you should have had them both. They were supposed to be under the same banner, the way I understood it, and they wound up being separate. But we still have that, the roll of the dice. Who was going to show the prelims first? Fox Sports 1 or Fox Sports 2? Where were they going to show up? Was NASCAR going over? Was baseball going over? Was a football game going over? Just what was going to be on your network programming. And big sports announcements under the Fox Sports deal, we always saw the big sports or the big UFC announcements come under ESPN, even though they had this deal and ESPN had the weigh-ins, pre-shows, the post-shows, and a lot of the coverage. ESPN had always broadcast the big fight announcements first. Dana White, he's on ESPN. He's announcing big fights. It's like Fox could not make an announcement. It's like they didn't have a sports crew to make the announcement. ESPN was always leading on those announcements. And if I'm not mistaken, back in the day, there's a show called MMA Live, and I think that was the ESPN show. It was one of the first televised shows that started talking about MMA in general. No, it wasn't labeled UFC Live. It was MMA Live. They broadcast sports information or MMA information about fights, whether it be UFC, Strikeforce, or Elite XC, or any of those other leagues that you're talking about that has to do with combat sports. So as we move on, we had the MMA Live and ESPN making a lot of the big announcements, and we knew the Fox deal was only going to last for so long. So recently, we had this announcement of the ESPN Plus, and UFC was signed on to ESPN Plus, which, I have ESPN, but I've never heard of ESPN Plus. And some of the news that I've watched, or people were talking about, is ESPN Plus going to take the place of Fight Pass, which I don't see it exactly taking the place of Fight Pass. I can see you moving a subscription from Fight Pass to ESPN Plus because of the money, but we have no idea of how one is going to compare to the other. Are you going to be able to watch grappling on ESPN Plus, or is the grappling going to stay over at Fight Pass? I would like to see a lot of the sports move to more mainstream and not everything be branded under UFC, because we know UFC is a brand, it's a league. And when they change their business model, that means your favorite sport, whether it be the grappling or MMA, it's going to change right along with it under that brand, under that UFC brand. But if if I like watching football, but if you like watching Arizona State, Arizona State's not going to be on the NFL channel. And I'm not going to do a whole lot of high school football watching under an NFL channel, or a college under an NFL channel, or anything like that. They rarely cross platforms or anything like that. Unlike you would see grappling under a UFC banner, or Contender Series, or was it the Ultimate Fighter Series? They are MMA, but we have to look at all the different types of sports under that UFC banner. So you can draw your own conclusions whether you like the ESPN Plus or not. But one of the things I have to wonder about is just how many fights. I think there's supposed to be maybe 15 fights. I can't remember the exact number. They said this is going to be on ESPN Plus. But nobody's come out for sure, and I hadn't seen an interview with Dana White to come out for sure to tell us the difference between the two packages. It's kind of a mystery, and they want everybody to kind of get on the bandwagon before I think they make up their mind. They want you to get the 7-day trial or go ahead and subscribe and see what the numbers are before they actually start making a commitment, what they're going to show here, what they're going to show over there. But from what I've seen and read and watched about ESPN Plus, it's got a slew of fights underneath there that you can watch. That's way comparable to the Fight Pass package, but no word of the grappling or any other televised series that's going to be on there. I have heard there's going to be other sports on ESPN Plus, but we already have ESPN. They show football, they show news, they show sports news, they show other types of sports. This is a special package. I think you can pay $49.99 and get ESPN Plus for the whole year, or you pay the $5 a month, something like that for the package. But why do we need another network thrown in there? There's a bunch of ESPNs. Last time I checked, I thought there was like 6 different ESPNs. So, why do we need another package? Could we not, streamline some of the other sports in specific channels underneath ESPN? Or let's say we make a full fight network of ESPN and not call it ESPN Plus, and we just add that on as a package where we're guaranteed this certain amount of information. But who knows? It's a money grab. We're talking about the evolution of a sport that kind of had the label as being underground, but they wanted to mainstream it. But when it starts to get mainstream, we see more dollar figure and bouncing back and forth and here and there. One of the things I used to just hate about Fox Sports 1 and 2 is how you didn't know what channel to watch it on. And I kind of anticipate ESPN Plus is going to be like that. When it's time for UFC and you want to watch, you don't know where that you need to tune in to watch it. Something else may be in its place. Maybe you buy the trial. Maybe you pay for 3 months and you pay for that and the pay-per-view, and are the prelims going to be on Fight Pass? Two fights on Fight Pass, 4 fights on ESPN Plus, another 4 or 5 fights on the pay-per-view. Am I going to have to jump around from channel to channel just to watch your favorite sport? Because I know when it's time for the Super Bowl, and I like watching the Super Bowl, and I don't look for it on 2 or 3 different channels. I don't want to switch here in the first quarter, switch over to somebody else's second quarter, and the last half of the game I'm watching on a totally different channel. You pay all the money. There should be some kind of luxury, some kind of, some peace of mind when you pay for your cable package, and I'm able to sit down, not have to change the channel, not have to watch different types of announcers. I should be able to have somebody that's knowledgeable of MMA, not a noob that's come over from basketball or soccer or anywhere else that's now announcing MMA and just doesn't know what's going on. They may be versed in the sports field, but when it comes down to explaining or giving details about MMA, just is like a fish out of water. I want to watch the pros, make the announcements and ask the tough questions and give the interviews and give insight about the things a casual fan, may not just have all the information about. But I'll follow this some more, but I want to put this in your ear and to see what you guys think about it, and it allows me to rant, because this is one of my first broadcasts of the new year. I've made some podcasts and broadcasts that I never uploaded to the server just because they were kind of rants. But I think this year I'm going to do a few shows to where I'm just talking about these different subjects where you can kind of follow along, and you can curse at me, or you can say, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about, or he's I like what you're talking about, and I believe I have the same opinion. You don't have to agree with me, but I appreciate you listening. Um, but that's pretty much where I stand. And a couple of things I want to bring to light: the advancement of the sport. It's the advancement of a brand. It's the advancement of the UFC brand. If we're talking about the advancement of the sport, then we're going to see more than just UFC on ESPN Plus. You should see Glory. You should see EBI. You should see, maybe IBJJF streams. They've been streaming for a long time across the internet. There's a lot of other sporting events that ESPN Plus could cover. I think anybody in the combat sports, anybody that follows combat sports is going to know that there's more than just MMA that's out there, and I'm sure there's a lot of good entertainment and local shows to be streamed on those channels. But we follow a brand, and we get used to TV telling us where to go and how much to pay for TV, when I think there's a lot of you out there paying over a couple of $100 for a lot of stations that you don't even watch. Some that are paying that much money for sports channels just to keep up with it. I know I have very few channels, but I can hit a button and I can see every score from the NFL, their divisions, records, who's playing, who's injured. I can see all that with just push of a button by app. Apps don't cost that much money, but cable networks want to take hundreds of our dollars to watch one or two different things and then tell us how much time we have to record it and how much time we have to watch it. But to each his own. But I think we just can't fall victim of all the propaganda and start throwing our money here, throwing our money there, and just kind of not knowing where we're throwing money. If something's $5 a month, we're going to the next best subscription. Something's $9 a month, you're subscribing to that. Before you know it, you have 50 subscriptions of $9 a month, which, hey, that may be a good idea. But as I move on and start talking about the NFL, I think I'm going to rant at you just a little bit longer about some of the things I witnessed in the NFL championship games from the other weekend. And the rant's not so much about just totally the NFL as it is about the people watching the NFL. And if you guys, I know everybody was following a little bit about the individuals inside the NFL that chose to kneel during the Star Spangled Banner, the national anthem. Who was kneeling and why they were kneeling, and the big debate went on and on. Some of the teams, stepped up and, made specific rules. League owners spoke up. But, a lot of, I'm going to say patriotism, was given and opinions given on what the players and the people in the league should be doing and how they should be portraying themselves. But that's not what I want to rant about, because everybody has their opinion and their freedoms to do as they please. And even after you listen to me rant, you have the freedom to do as you please and just take this as entertainment value, or take this as something that you're going to just drag on and make a big issue about it, and it becomes your 15% of your life or 50% of your life becomes consumed about my opinion on a podcast. But I'm just talking about Jimmy Buffett singing the Star Spangled Banner at the Rams-Saints game. I'm talking about Melissa Etheridge singing the Star Spangled Banner at the Patriots-Chiefs game. And I'll still watch the NFL despite what happened. I have my teams that I watch it from week to week. But from week to week, it's rare that we see the Star Spangled Banner being sang or played or, performed. And what goes on before the shows it's not televised just a whole lot. But when we get into playoff season like this, Super Bowl time, we see more of that because, they have more time on television to show these types of things. But I know there's some that are just like intense followers of the NFL and will watch every game to see who's kneeling, who's not kneeling, who's saluting, who's not saluting, who's sitting down, who's in the bathroom taking a dump. There's some that want to know all the details. So I'm just going to talk about some of the things that I noticed. And I enjoyed watching, Jimmy Buffett perform, Melissa Etheridge perform. Everybody has their favorites who they want to hear sing. But during the performance of Melissa Etheridge, watching the guys on the sidelines, a lot of them, hand over their heart, and they're singing along, and cameras move around, and I see Tom Brady on the sidelines, and I see him warming his hands up. He's not singing. He's looking down. He's thinking about, the game that's coming up. He's not doing anything patriotic, which, he plays for the Patriots. But, when you look back at interviews and people who had opinions about certain aspects of the game and who kneeled and do you support your teammates and this and that, he was one of the ones, he's one of the leaders, one of the great quarterbacks, that was asked opinion. And, he had his opinion and he pretty much didn't want to stay out of it, but wanted to support his teammates. But whatever his opinion really doesn't matter. And I pick on him because he is popular and he brings a popular name and I can throw his name around and, ears will go up. But there's several other players and people in the stands, doing some of the same things, warming their hands. They weren't kneeling. They didn't have their hands over their heart. They weren't singing. Some people were walking around. Some people weren't paying any attention to what was going on. Even, Jimmy Buffett's performance, there were people not saluting, sitting down, not covering their heart with their right hand. It goes on in every performance. And, my years coming up in law enforcement and being around Star Spangled Banner Parade at many events, graduations, there's so many different places where I've seen it performed. And there's been times where I was busy and couldn't do it myself, but there was times that I could sit and watch and enjoy it and salute or put my hand over my heart. But there was always somebody at each one of these events that wasn't doing it. Whether they're just too young, the kid that can barely walk is running around. Their parents have to tend to them. Whether it be the senior citizen that just couldn't stand up but still didn't put their hand over their heart. Whether it was the people standing at the end of the stadium that they were talking during the whole thing. There's somebody at every one of these events. Now, one thing that's not at every one of these events is somebody running around taking pictures, posting up memes, and getting talk started about a specific group that either maybe they protested for whatever reason, or maybe they weren't so patriotic that day and just were too lazy to do it, or maybe they were just disrespectful or in a bad mood that day and didn't do it. Who knows what reasons there are, but we have certain demographic of people that will point at a couple of incidents in the NFL and drag those points along with them to point those out and talk about how bad the league is and there's too much money and there's, a bunch of crybabies and these are grown men. Yeah, the NFL doesn't make the whole world. And there's a lot more world out there that if you're going to take an issue with them, we can take an issue with the whole world, which that may be some people's stances. But, we can call NFL a brand, just like I called UFC earlier in the show a brand. It's a certain brand. They may not want to have people think of their brand like that as people who kneel and they make corrections or maybe they see the freedom of each individual that chooses to do as they please. But I'm more or less under the understanding that most people that witnessed the event of people kneeling while they kneeling had a bone to pick with not an individual, and not even how do we put this? Let's say they had a bone to pick with a specific group of people and some other hidden agendas that they have about this specific group of people. And this is your chance to pick on them, and this is your chance to really open up and say some hateful things with, you can kind of hide behind some of the issues that come up and pick on this certain group of people. And that's, when I say that group of people, and that's a lot of different groups that's kind of thrown in there, and I'm not talking about people that are for or against. I'm just talking about the people that make it a big issue, and they can't seem to go on with their life without making that an issue, without talking about if they're going to watch another NFL game. I hadn't seen many people talk about, I'm not going to another high school graduation because Mr. So-and-so or Miss So-and-so didn't have their hand over their heart because they were too busy running to the bathroom, or they weren't paying attention to what was going on. I just hadn't seen that type of, disgust, I guess. Just mainly at the NFL. Is it just because it's popular? Just because the NFL is popular, there's more NFL games than graduations? There's more NFL games than NHL games? More of those than Major League Baseball games? I think more of it's just who the people choose to point out and who the people choose to pick on. And I'm sure I could continue on, but that's just one of the things that I noticed, about the whole thing. You can take any one of these sports and you can talk about how grown men act. And you can take a look at yourself when you show up to your kid's t-ball game and, evaluate how you act. You can evaluate how you act when you go to church on Sunday. You can evaluate how you act if you don't go to church on Sunday. But I think any evaluation should start with yourself, and then you can start to move outward. Because I know if you correct the things about yourself, some of the things about yourself and the way you treat others will make the world a better place. So if you can start with number one and start making the corrections there, I think you can lead by example, and you can predominantly affect the people that's closest to you, and that's going to move outward. Because I know when I meet people from day to day, it's a beautiful world. People love to meet people, and there's not all these walls in between me and them. And when we talk, those things only become an issue when you decide to blow those issues up and throw them in the other people's faces and force them into, it's not going to say a combat situation, but force them into a situation where you have an argument or a debate about that issue, and it just drags on, and anger builds, and anger's not a good thing to spread. So start with yourself, look at yourself, and move outward. But shoot, that's all I got to say. Hope you enjoyed if you want to call them rants, a couple of different rants over UFC and the NFL. But we'll see where this ESPN Plus, how it pans out in the next few weeks, and we'll see what goes on at the Super Bowl. If anybody goes crazy about anybody doing something odd at the Super Bowl during the Star Spangled Banner this year? Or can we as people kind of move on and move on to bigger and better things like the next podcast? And I got a couple of guests in store that I got coming up for you. I'm not going to tell their names right now, but make sure you're listening. And if you hadn't, make sure you subscribe on YouTube, Podbean, iTunes. Make sure you tell a friend about it. If you don't do anything else, share it with one of your friends. And I hope you've been entertained. Hope you're not just too mad. Well, maybe I do. Who knows? But anyway, thanks for listening. I'll be back with you again. Keep listening to Mega Talks.